One. Hello and welcome to the Breaking Free from Self-Sabotage Solutions collaboration podcast. I'm Nathan Francis. This is Tanner Dagenais. This is our third go at it, Tanner. We might as well let the listeners know that this is our third go. Zoom's been playing up on us for the last 20 minutes. Hopefully we can get through it now. Today, we're going to be talking about technology, video games, our experiences, and the experiences we've seen out there in modern society. I know I've worked in a lot of schools and stuff and can see how this affects our children these days and back then when we were kids too. So Tanner, it's been a while. I've had a break. You've had a break. Welcome back. How are you going? And let's get cracking into today. And hopefully we don't have any tech dramas. We can get through the next 40 minutes or so. So Tanner, welcome.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Nathan. Yeah, I feel like it was just some little deja vu here going on. But I mean, I'm always glad to come on and collaborate with you. And I think tonight's subject for our podcast is going to be a really important one for a lot of the youth out there, and really just everyone, because technology is so prevalent right now in our society. And I think it's really important that we talk about the goods and the bads, talk about our experiences, talk about, what we can do to make sure we get the most out of it, to make sure that, technology is going to help us move towards our best life instead of away from it. Right. So, yeah, glad to be here. Glad to be talking.
So Tanner, yes, I'm very glad to be here too. So we might as well get cracking into it. So what's your experience been? Because we're the same age. So the video
Mhm.
game stuff didn't really come in until early 2000s, really, for us. How have you seen it evolve over time, and what's been your experience with technology, video games, and all of that? Were you a gamer kid, were you, or were you outside? Let's sort of delve into your story with all this stuff, mate.
Yeah, I was always a very active kid. Like my parents always made sure I got outside. That being said, I still did play some video games, right? Like I remember when I was like 4 or 5, watching my brother play. I think it's the Super Nintendo entertainment system. He was playing some Mario Brothers back in the day, right? I think it was Super Mario Brothers 2, and that game was just a classic game. And games are a very interesting thing, right? Like it allows you like to experience like a whole new world, something that you probably wouldn't have experienced within like the real world. So there is like I do have a fondness of video games and gaming, and of course I still do play some games. So we'll definitely talk about that. But do I think that gaming can be harmful? Yes. Um, but I think anything can really be harmful, especially technology, right? Technology, I think, can be used for good or it can be used for bad. And it really depends on what your perspective of it is and what you're actually taking out of it and um, what you're like exposing yourself to do, or sorry, what you're exposing yourself to within like the technology. So like, what things you're listening to, what things you're watching, the games that you're playing, all those things have a really big effect on you. So that is my experience. I played a lot of I did go out a lot, but I also did play a lot of video games, especially as I started going like into like high school and college time. My amount of activity started dropping, my amount of video games started going up, to the point where I was like just playing video games like all the time. Like anytime I had free time, I was playing video games, either getting high and drunk or playing video games. So that was my experience.
What do
And
you, oh, yeah,
cut
go
that
on.
back. Oh, so we're gonna
I
start.
was just going to ask you, why were you, so as you got older, so why
Mhm.
did that go up so much? Like, were
Yeah.
you running away from stuff? Like, how was that for
Mhm.
you? Let's go a bit deeper into it, get our listeners to sort of
Yeah.
understand what was happening in your world for you to be, because a lot of kids out there are just hooked into it. And, what was your experience being hooked into it so much? Were you sort of running, you have other stuff going on? You were, what was going on in your world around that time?
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about it a lot. So I think there's multiple aspects of it. Like, right, there's multiple influences and multiple reasons why I decided to play a lot of video games and focus on video games instead of like my own life. Part of it was that I was running away from, like all my fears and all the pain that I was sitting with, because I wasn't where I was. Like, I wasn't where I wanted to be in life. I was feeling pressure with where I was, and so it felt good to go into a world where I could control things more, where I was, leveling up, where I was like, really successful. And I was always like better at video games than other people. So people were like, oh man, you're so good at this game. And like, I had like all my friends like talk about how good I was at the game or whatever. And so it felt really good, right? I was like, oh yeah, I want to play more in this world. I want to, because we as humans, we're drawn to just feeling good. We're drawn to that success. We're drawn to it. And so that's something that video games can help us achieve. But at the same time, the problem with it is that then you can just get that easy source of video games, that easy source of like accomplishment or like success from the video games instead of from the real world, like you actually need to be getting it from to be successful, right? It's kind of like with like same thing as porn, right? You can go out and like make love to a woman, which takes a lot more time, like takes a lot more effort. You actually have to make a relationship with that woman, or you can just go log onto your computer and go jerk off and get that quick satisfaction. You don't have to put as much work into it, right? That's kind of the same thing as with video games. You can go get that quick satisfaction of being like a success and leveling up and moving forward in life without actually having going out into the world and putting yourself on the line and risking a lot of things because you get to do it within the virtual world. And so I think that's what drew me to it a lot, because that's what I was craving, right? And that's what I was not getting with my life. And so for me, it was like video games were not necessarily like the main problem. They became a problem, but they were my solution to what I was missing out with in my life, right? It's kind of just like with alcohol or drugs. Like that's the way I see it as, is like it's not the main problem, but it became the main problem, or it became like its own main problem, if that makes sense.
You're also getting praise. You had this
Mm-hmm.
reputation, this awesome video gamer.
Yep.
So it's like, well, you're getting all these feel good emotions, right? You're like,
Mm-hmm.
people are, you're a level of respect for the type of gamer that you once were. So clearly you're going to be drawn to play more because you have this reputation to uphold, and you're also getting all of your emotional needs met too,
Mm-hmm.
just by someone
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, you're so good at this," and it's like, well, yeah, I am, and then you're getting
Yeah.
those appraisals, yeah.
Exactly. Like it's essentially like games are really good at getting you to continue playing because it has that dopamine fix, right? Like
Yeah.
you do good at the game and you progress through the game, and then they reward you by giving you like a level up. So you get like your character gets stronger, or you get a new way to play the game. Like you, instead of just having to walk around everywhere, now you can ride your bike around so you can move around the game faster, right? Like it's just little things that are like small that wouldn't seem like they make a big difference, but like they make your experience playing that game more fun. And so you're like more enticed to continue wanting to play because like, oh, that felt really good to get that reward, and you continue playing. And actually, this is something I talk about a lot, is like the rewards that we give ourselves fuel ourselves wanting to do something more, right? And that why this is important, because a lot of like good video games will give you good rewards that make you want to continue playing the game, want to continue leveling up, continue moving forward, right? But what I found within my own life was that I was not giving myself those same kind of level of
Yes.
rewards, right? So I was giving myself the rewards that were like instead of like leveling up and getting like new experience and getting like new armors and becoming a stronger version of myself, I was leveling up and then like drinking alcohol and like smoking a bunch of weed and picking out on like some Chick-fil-A or something, and I'd be hungover the next day. I'd have less money. I'd have more brain fog. I wouldn't be feeling as good. And so it was like the opposite. Instead of like leveling up and becoming a better version of myself, I'd be doing something good and then bring myself back down. It's like one step forward, two steps back. That cycle. And so that's what it was for me. Like it was a mix of like I was getting something out of video games I wasn't getting with my life, and then two, like it was the dopamine fix. It brings you back more and more and more and more. Makes you want to do it more. And it's the more I think also that you start to realize that the world, the society that we live in is kind of backwards and dark, doesn't make you want to go into the society as much, right? It's like easier to kind of go back into this virtual world where it's like I don't have to think about I'm getting poisoned on all levels from the government. I don't have to think about all this shit. I can just go and, think about like my hunky dory, like made up world. And so that I think may be a draw for some people too. For me, I don't think I wasn't really aware of it fully on that level yet. Like I wasn't fully aware like that we were getting poisoned. But I think on some level I knew things weren't just right. Right. I think I knew like people going to work a job they hate for their whole lives, and people think that's normal, right? Like that's the society that we're living in, where people are just doing things they hate for their whole entire life, and they consider that a normal thing to do. So that's my experience with video games. What is your experience with video games? So I kind of went on a whole long rant and
No,
charade
it's
there,
fine,
but
though. Go for it. I was happy to hear it. It's interesting because when we were kids, Tanner, like there wasn't,
uh-huh.
we had the big fat computers. Like we had not like a skinny laptop like this. We had the computer with the big fat background, the TV, the big fat, like I didn't really play the PlayStation or those things much
Mhm.
until probably grade 3 or 4, really, for me. I remember my parents first bought me a PlayStation. I was super excited, but I never played any of those violent games when I was really
Mhm.
little. I only ever played this because I love my sport. So I'd always be outside kicking the footy. If it was raining outside, well, then I'd be inside playing footy on the PlayStation, cricket or wrestling or soccer or something. Like I was always
Mhm.
playing games that were sporty like FIFA and that too. And then as I sort of got older into the teenage years, and you have a group of friends that are playing Grand Theft Auto, and it's like, well, what's Grand Theft Auto? So you jump on the computer and you Google it. Oh yeah, okay. So then I started playing those more violent games as I got older.
Mhm.
So I was playing the Call of Duty, your Grand Theft Autos. I was still playing those sport games, but then yeah, I flipped and played the violent ones too. And I remember whenever I played those violent games, I was a different person. In Grand Theft Auto, you're killing people, you're running people over, or you're shooting people, or you're robbing stuff. You're doing all these things that you really shouldn't be doing in society because it's against the law. And then whenever someone would speak to me, or yeah, literally would speak to me, I'd be this angry person because I guess I was angry playing that game because it was making
Mhm.
me like it was changing my psyche, right? I was a more angry, violent person because I was doing angry, violent things in the game. So that
Yeah.
impacted my life around me to whenever my mom or my dad or my brother would ask me to do something, I'd be like, I'd bite their heads off. And it's like, well, that's the game doing that. That wasn't me. It was the game. And my whole mood, demeanor would change. And yeah, it was a really interesting time. Like I never really played much video games,
Mhm.
but when I did, I was a different person. So that's probably why I never played them as much. But in just being back in my old hometown over the last couple of weeks, I was down in Victoria and I was hearing all these stories about kids. Actually, not just kids, Tanner. This might shock you, but there are blokes our age that have
Mhm.
quit their full-time jobs that were doing some cool things, and they're in their rooms living with their parents playing video games, and they're our age, Tanner.
Yeah.
Like they're
Mhm.
literally living the life of a teenager. Like they're getting up, well, they're not even getting up. They're staying in their rooms playing PlayStation all day or whatever they're
Yeah.
doing. And they're coming out for lunch, dinner, coffee, all this stuff. And then they're back in their rooms. They're living in their rooms 24/7 playing video games. And they're our age. And they
Mhm.
were in that system with the purpose and that. And I was hearing all these stories. I'm like, how many more out there are there our age that are doing this?
A lot.
Yeah, that was a shock to me. It's like, how can we help those people? Hopefully, they're watching stuff like this. I don't know if they are, but how can we help? Like they're our age.
Mhm.
Like that hit home to me. I'm like, how did they get here? And people were asking my mum and some friends that are like, Nate, what's going on? Do you think? I said, well, for starters, they don't have any purpose.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, they have lost their zest for life. That all they have to escape their reality and escape their life is the video game because as you said, it's a whole nother reality. It's a whole nother world. You know,
Mhm.
as I said, they might be getting their feel good emotions from that game. They're not getting those feel good emotions in their real life. So
Yeah.
they're living their life through the video game. And that's a really
Mhm.
dangerous place to be in. And that was sort of my response to most of those questions I'd asked. But it was really alarming to me being down in Victoria again in Australia and seeing and hearing these things. And it's like, well, how many more are there? Especially
There's
like these people, they're our age. They should be out there in the world, yeah, working, I guess, and well, finding what brings them passion and monetizing it, and then also meeting, like having friends and starting the family and all those things that we're doing. Like, how did we get to that point? Like, what's going on here?
I feel like this
Your
is something
thoughts
we
on that?
talked about before.
Must be.
But it brings back to the school system and
Yeah.
you know, teaching us that this is like the society that we live in, right? Like that's essentially what the school system is. It brings you to a place that most kids, let's be honest, no one wants to be in the school system. You're forced to be there learning things you don't want to learn, to be with people a lot of times you don't want to be with, and you're going to separate from the people that you love the most. And then you get told the things that you think are interesting are not interesting. That you need to focus on the things that you're told are important, right? And I feel like that like and just like it's just the whole society in general, right? Like it doesn't build you into an environment where you want to continue playing the game. Like where I went back to talk about how like video games are really good at like rewarding you to continue wanting to play the game, right? Our society right now does not currently reward you to continue to want to continue playing the game, right? At least the way it's set up and the way that we're taught about it.
Yeah, because I was
Um,
gonna say, because you can walk the path
yeah,
we're
yeah,
walking, and we
exactly.
get those, but
Hmm.
it's a longer term thing. It's not
Yeah,
instant.
exactly. And you have to build a lot of these things out for yourself, right? Like the reason why video games are so easy to do that is because like the developers of the game already thought about these things, created the quest line for you, created what you need to do to level up. They created like all the rewards you're going to get. You don't have to think about this stuff. You just have to go in there, spend your time, focus on whatever you're supposed to do to level up, and you'll level up and you'll get that experience and you'll move forward, right? And the real world, it's more open. You have to decide, what do I want to do with my life? How am I going to get there? What things do I have to do to support myself to get there? How am I going to reward myself along the way to get there, right? Like it's not built out for you. And we don't talk about these things in school. We're not talking about how to build your dream life, or how to like actually create what you want. We're taught how to work for someone else and how to create their life, right? So I think it's a fundamental problem of society, and that's why people would much rather play video games than go into the real world and
It's
focus on the
easy.
real world, right? Because and then also on top of that, they just see all the chaos that's happening, the whole blaster, like the whole pandemic stuff, all the craziness with politics and the wars and all this stuff, all the division and all the assassination attempts and who knows, all this stuff going on. People don't want to focus on that stuff. They see that stuff and they're like, that's scary, right? Like honestly, I can see why people are scared of it, because it's a lot of big things happening outside of your control. But at the same time, like it's not all doom and gloom. There is a way to come back out of it. But I think that's the reason why, um, kids, even people our age, even people older than our age, are stuck, focusing and only wanting to play video games instead of going out into the real world, because it's a fundamental problem within our society.
It's sad though too,
Yeah. Hmm.
because our lives work the same way, but it's not as instant as a video game. You're not going to get that instant
Yeah.
hit in life. It's a gradual thing. You're working towards a
Hmm.
vision. And unfortunately, a lot of these kids and that they don't have a vision. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's sad. And that's what the school system's done. And as you said, you're building someone else's dream, not necessarily building your own. You're in that cycle. You're not enjoying what you're doing. So of course, if you're not enjoying life and enjoying your experience, then something like video games, porn, alcohol, these things, they're just going to be so drawn to you because it's distracting you, but also numbing that hate that you have, or that lack of passion for. It's an interesting cycle, mate, and it's actually quite sad.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely is sad, but I mean, the good news is there's a way out. I was that kid who was playing video games 24/7. And now I'm not playing 24/7, right? Like now I'm focusing on my life. Now I'm building myself
But
up.
that's what's going to inspire Joey.
Mhm.
Someone watching this? How did you break free from that cycle, bro?
Well, I mean, part of it had to do with what you talked about, like having a purpose, right? Like knowing what you're actually building. It's when I look back on it, what I actually did, which that's actually why I built my program, um, the way I have built it, for gamers, built around like a video game, because essentially the ideas of a video game is what you can do to take and like apply to your own life to get you out of it,
Literally.
right? So that's why I say, like, not everything's good or bad. There's good ideas from video games. There's good things that we can take and apply to our own lives and make it so that we're more like interested in our lives. So we're, moving forward. So we're not slowing down our own progress and sabotaging ourselves. The first thing all games have, or all good games have, is like a quest line and a story. So why are you here? And what's your goal? What's the thing you're moving towards, right? If you don't know that, then how can you like realistically move anywhere in life? You're just gonna be randomly taking, you're just be taking random stuff, right? And you're going random places. You're gonna end up in a random spot and point, like a random point in life, and you won't know why you're there, because at the end of the day, you're not actually directing yourself towards something, right? But if you actually have like an idea of what you want in your head, your main quest, then you can start to break that down into smaller quests. Like, okay, so this is my main goal. My main goal is to, get out of my 9 to 5 and to be able to be like self-sufficient, maybe live on my own, live like on a grid someplace, right? So how do you get to that point in maybe 10 years? How do you get there in 5 years? How do you get there? How do you start building to that point? Then start looking at like individual daily actions. And you start to look at your individual daily actions. Because at the end of the day, you're in the you are where you are in life because of the things that you've done, the things that you've thought, and the things that you believe, right? And if you want to change that, then you need to change your thoughts, your actions, and your beliefs, which starts to look inwards at yourself, right? So before you even start to change anything, you start to look inwards at yourself and say, well, why am I here? Well, I'm here because of myself. I got myself to this point, right? And that can be something that's not always easy to accept, realizing that we are where we are because we got ourselves here, and getting rid of all that like blame game of like, oh no, this happened. This forced me to do this, right? Not, and realistically, nothing can force you to do anything. You can make your own decisions. Something horrible may happen, but it doesn't mean you have to act in a certain way because of it, right? You always have the freedom to react in any given situation. That's your main freedom. So, at the end of the day, I think it's starting with getting your your vision for the future, right? What are you building, and then breaking that into individual small daily steps, and then from there on, just learning about the subconscious part of your mind, right? I think both you and me have benefited greatly from learning how our mind works. And I equivalent that to like learning how a controller works in the video game, right? Like if you don't know like the buttons to press within the video game, or how to make your guy jump, or how to make your guy slide, or drop an item, or pick up an item, or interact with something, then you're not going to be able to play the game efficiently. If you don't know how your mind works, one of the most powerful parts of your minds, if you don't know how that works when you're going through life, well, you're not going to be able to go through life efficiently. You're not going to be able to go through life and be super successful. I mean, you might get lucky and be successful, right? But then that you need to learn how your mind works. And so that's something else, that I think it was really impactful to my life, was learning how my mind works, how my mind's influenced, and how to reprogram my mind. Um, so that's those. I think that's the starting point to where I started changing my life around.
But was there a moment where you're like, I can't keep going like this? Where you were just, it was such a struggle. Like everyone has their breaking point, and
Mhm.
I guess everyone's on their own journey with that. But there must have come a time where you're like, there has to be something better out there for me than just getting high, getting drunk, and playing video games.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I was really with realization, like my rock bottom. I think I've talked to you about this before on my self-sabotage story journey, but you know, I was in college. I was getting high and drunk every day, playing video games every single day, and found that I was in credit card debt. I was not in the job I liked. I was starting to gain weight. I was feeling frustrated and feeling upset, and so I actually, what ended up happening is we couldn't afford paying our mortgage,
That's
our
right.
rent anymore, and so I ended up having to call my mom to ask, like, "Hey, mom, can we move in?" Um, I was really embarrassed at the time because like I never thought I had to move back in with my parents, and I'm lucky I had the opportunity to be able to do so. But I ended up having moved back in with my parents, and I remember calling the phone, like, "Oh yeah, honey, you're totally fine. You can come move back in with us." So me and my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, we packed everything up, put most of our stuff in a storage unit, and then we went into my old bedroom. Both me and her were in there. She had her desk in there so she could work in there, and we were just like packed in this tiny room. And that's where we lived there for 2 years. So I didn't have a job at first. I had a lot of free time. I was just mostly playing video games at first, right? And still smoking. I started, I think, finding some Jason stuff, and I was feeling frustrated. Like I knew I wanted to change. Like I go to bed every night and say like, I'm gonna stop smoking tomorrow. I'm gonna stop drinking tomorrow, and I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and I'm gonna change things around. Wake up the next morning and be like, I should probably have a little, a little smoke or a little something. Like my mind would like try to convince me for like the longest period until eventually I just gave in, right? And then I just continued smoking and drinking the rest of the day, and then that same thing would happen again that night, until eventually I found Jason Christoph, both our mentors. Um, he was just talking about like self-sabotage and like why people like sabotage themselves, and I was like, that's me. I'm
Hmm.
I'm that guy sabotaging himself. Like, and like I knew it. Like I knew I was sabotaging myself, but I didn't know why. I thought I was just broken. Like I always heard people like, "Oh, you just need like the willpower, the determination." I was like, I feel like I have willpower. I feel like I want to do this, but then I always talk myself out of it. I always do like the opposite, right? It feels like I'm working against myself. And so I felt broken until I found Jason talking about how I wasn't broken, how how your mind works. And I was like, something just clicked in my mind. I was like, yeah, I'm not broken. There's a way out of this. And that I think was like the main changing factor. Yeah, like, obviously I think that dark night of the soul, like just being in a horrible situation, being in debt, moving in with my parents, starting to gain weight, like it's not feeling good with my life was part of it. But I think, I'd been feeling that way for a while. What really changed it was a new perspective, like a new like influx of information to allow me to see like there is a way out, right? Because like I knew that I was in a bad situation, but I didn't see a way out for myself. If that makes sense. So I was like just sitting in that shitty situation, which is probably why I was diving more into the video games and more into the alcohol and more into the drugs, because I didn't see myself a way out for myself. But once I saw that way out, I was like, okay, then there's hope, there's an opportunity, there's a way to make something different. That's not all that life is. And so then I ended up, joining his course, and I guess the
If
rest is history.
if one of those people that I was talking about happened just to stumble upon this and watch this, Tanner, what would you say to that person that's watching this right now that is stuck in their bedrooms playing video games 24/7 and has no purpose and has no meaning? What would you say to that person to start that journey of breaking free? Pardon the pun of the name of the podcast.
Yeah. So I mean, I know that right now it may seem like playing video games is more interesting than your real life. And it can be easy to get stuck in that. But I want you to know that there is a way forward, and that realistically the most interesting and the best video game of all the time is going to be the real life video game that we're living right here. Um, there's nothing that can compare to it. And once you actually start to make moves and start building progress and start building those systems around you that will make you more interested and that will like make you want to continue playing your life, continue moving forward in life. It feels great. Like playing video games all day doesn't even compare to moving forward in life. So I recommend first just realizing that there is a way forward, and allowing yourself to maybe go ask for some help or start taking some new steps to, maybe apply some of the information we talked about here tonight to change your life. So
Very powerful, Tanner. Very, very powerful advice. And also, you should say in there too, get outside and move your body as well. Because if you're
yeah,
stuck in there playing your video games, we're made to move. We're designed to move. We're not designed to be sitting down at a desk all day working on a five or sitting, laying, whatever, playing video games all day. We're not designed for that. That's not our human design. We're designed to be outside. We're here to be creative and we're here to move. And unfortunately, at the moment, a lot of people aren't moving. And it's quite sad to see. It
yeah,
really
yeah. The
is.
exercise is super important. Definitely. You know, even if you're still going to be playing video games, even just getting outside 10 to 15 minutes a day is going to be a major game changer in your life. You know, every hour you're on a computer, get up, stretch, move your body around, right? Something simple to do. It doesn't have to be like an instant switch where you just turn off the video games right away, right? Or turn off the TV shows or the movies. Like we haven't even talked about the other technology, which we could talk on real bit.
No, we haven't.
But
Yeah.
like it doesn't have to be like an instant, like tenuous, like switch, like this is just gone from my life. It can be, but it doesn't have to necessarily be that. And sometimes it could just be like cutting it out, like cutting out a couple hours every single day and getting a little bit of that time back to focus on something else, to go outside and do some mountain bikes, to go outside and do some grounding, or go on like a morning walk, or go swimming out in the lake or something, right? Just getting outside and changing your routine up a little bit and experiencing something that this world has to offer, which honestly, this world has so much to offer that the majority of us haven't experienced a fraction of it. So,
100%. Well
yep.
said. And that's a good segue into those other forms of technology. There's not just video games. We have computers now. We have phones and tablets and watches and all this stuff, Tanner. How, like, they're really going after the youth of today and really, really ramping up the technology use, because we both know how powerful the youth of today are. They don't want them stepping into their power. They don't want them finding their purpose, because if they find their purpose and find their power, that's when the whole show, the circus, everything, the stage show falls over, because that system is done, because those youth is what's keeping this alive. They step away, they step into their purpose, they remember who they are, is a massive threat to the engineers or whoever is behind the veil here. And that is why all these distractions are here, because if they remember, the show's over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a major problem with the amount of technology we have in our society.
It's wild,
And I
eh?
almost see it as like an attack on nature itself. Uh, Um, I mean, look at like young kids nowadays, like 2 years old, are
Oh, mate.
being given like iPads and stuff so they can get distracted. The other day we were out at like a restaurant and this family sits down next to us and they don't even try to have their kid sit down without a tablet. As soon as they sit down, they get the tablet, give the kid their tablet and put on their headset, and their kid was just like focused on that for the whole remainder of the restaurant. It's like give your kid an opportunity to sit there and eat food with you guys and experience going out to a restaurant and
Family
like
time.
not just be tied into that video the whole time, right?
That's wild.
It's it's crazy. But I
You've
mean,
got a
like
kid,
it's
Tanner.
yeah.
You wouldn't give Oliver your phone, would you?
Oh no, definitely not.
No.
He watches a little bit of stuff, but not very much, honestly, at all. And we're very selective about what we watch because there's a lot of TV shows out there that are like one have a lot of very bad messages in them. They're very fast
Subliminally too.
paced. Yeah, they're very fast paced moving, right?
Yeah.
Like the colors, like the very vibrant colors. The scenes change very fast. There's a lot of like explosions of light. There's a lot of like things that make it addictive for a child, right? Um, and then what I've noticed with my son, if he does watch too much, or even just like a little bit during the week, he'll start to get more moody or start to get more like anxious. Like I notice a difference in his emotions, kind of like you were talking about with video games, right? It doesn't just happen with video games. It doesn't just happen. It happens with any form of technology, right? We're influenced by our surroundings, essentially, is what it is. We're influenced by the people around us and by the things around us. So it's not only just like, oh, Bobby says something to you and you're frustrated now. It could be like, oh, you're playing a video game and this thing happened and now you're more angry, right? Or it could be like, oh, you're watching this TV show and this person didn't get their way, so they started screaming. So now you're going to start screaming because you saw someone else do the same exact thing, right? So it's just our minds are constantly learning and mimicking our surroundings to want to fit in. And so that's known. Like there's a reason why we're not taught about the subconscious part of our mind and like how this functions, right? Because it's being used against the public right now, right? You look at technology and like TV shows, like it's just been getting darker. Like we've talked about this on other podcasts. Like it's just getting like darker and darker, like more sexualized, more blood, more gore, things that you wouldn't have seen on TV 10 years ago is now like prevalent. Like it's weird if a TV show doesn't have it now. Um, so I think it's definitely like technology is affecting us on a deep level. What's your opinion?
I agree. And I agree that it's like they're trying to really build this AI technology
Mhm.
control grid, right? Because the more stuff you have on tech, like your driver's license, your bank card, all these things, the more we're reliant on tech, the more they can just flick a switch and switch the whole thing off and no one can do anything. Because if we were self-sufficient, self-reliant, and we had cash and we had gas, like they want to turn gas off, make it all electrical, especially here in Australia, that if you're so reliant on tech, like it's what they want. Because if you're
Mhm.
reliant on the tech, they can come in and be like, oh, there's an outage, there's an outbreak of the Microsoft thing that happened the other day here in
Yeah, I was
Australia.
about to say that.
It's like they'll flick a switch. Like it's all a control grid. They'll just flick a
Mhm.
switch. What happens then? Well, you can't go to the local store because the doors are automatic. So they're electrical. So you can't walk in the door because
Mhm.
it's like if everything is reliant on tech, then they flick that switch. You like what do you do?
Yeah.
Like everything stops, which is what they want. But if there's no cash, well then you can't go to any local market or anything because it's on electrical. Oh, you got to use your card. Oh, our system's down. So it's like, what do you do? But if we're so reliant on it, we need to step away from it. Like we can use it. Like I know for me, my relationship with the tech has changed, Tanner. You know,
Mhm.
when you are sort of like a teenager and that you consume a lot of technology, you consume a lot of TV and this stuff. Well, what we do now is we create. So we've gone from consuming to creating. So I'm using technology to create. So what's
Yeah.
Nathan creating? Well, he's creating this podcast. He's creating posts on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. He's using it to create. So I'm using my voice. I'll video myself on a walk and talk. I'm videoing myself right now. I'm creating, whereas I'm not consuming. So if I want to keep my message organic to me, as you said about human behavior and how we like to mimic and copy others. Well, if I'm
Mhm.
consuming your content, Jason's content, consuming a few of my buddies' content, well then where's my message? Because then when I start talking, I've consumed yours, I've consumed Joey, Tommy, and Matt. And it's like, well, then I'm going to be taking bits and pieces from their message and it's not going to be my own. See how I'm then consuming? But if I'm creating, then I'm going to probably not listen to Tanner's video until I finish creating, maybe. But if I'm about to create something, I want my message to be purely mine, then I'm not going to be on that technology listening to other people because I want my own message to be mine and organic to me. So we're
Mhm.
not consuming, we're creating. And a lot of people out there are consuming a lot of technology. They're taking other people's opinions and stuff and they're not listening to their own opinion. You know, even look, people listen to the news and they are like, okay, well, they're being fed those lines. It's not necessarily their opinion of the world, it's what they're
Mhm.
reading off the bloody camera in front of them. Then you have the awakened community. Well, a lot of people listen to a lot of the influencers that are out there and their beliefs. Well, that's their beliefs of the world, right? It's the same thing. You're consuming the
Mhm.
same content, but it's someone else's opinion. It's still not yours. So when we create content, a lot of people quote these people and they say such and such, and it's like, well, what's your opinion on that? That's someone else's opinion, but what's yours? People are consuming your content for your opinion, not
Mhm.
someone else's line. And it's like the same with the other side of the fence where you have the news. People are listening to, you see the news last night. There was the IT outage. Did you see the news last night? There was a fire in bloody North Carolina where Tanner lives. It's like, well, we're seeing other people's opinions. Well, on the news, it's what the handlers want you to believe. But then you're on the other side of the fence, you're consuming content and it's someone else's opinion. Whereas we're worthy of having our own opinion. So I ask you, Tanner, as an example, what's your opinion of the current state of affairs in the world? I know you've got your own opinion. You aren't going to just quote someone. You've got your own opinion. It's like, well, let's go back to thinking for ourselves. That's what I'm getting at here. We're allowing technology to think for us. Whereas we all have our own opinion. We all have our own stance. We all have our own take. Let's express that. Let's not listen to the news. Let's not listen to all these influencers talking about the world events. They might get it wrong. They might be right. I don't know. But what's your opinion?
Mm-hmm.
And then voice that. Because we've all seemed to have lost our opinion. We're all taking bits and pieces from everyone and then forming our own. It's like, well, why don't you step out into the world? What do you see out there? Do you see darkness? Do you see light? Do you see a virus? Do you not? Do you see chemtrails? There's none here today, but what do you see? And then express that. Because we seem to all just take on board other people's stuff, and then we step out into the world and we just quote everyone, and we're not really expressing our own opinion. I see it all the time. I'm like, I don't care what Mark Passio has to say about it. What's your opinion? I don't care what Max Egan has to say. What's your opinion? Sometimes I've used to find myself quoting Jason a lot. It's like, well, yeah, Jason's got his opinion, but what's mine? What's organic to me? You know, that's sort of where I'm at now. It's like, well, let's sort of step away from all of that and let's focus on our message and our opinion, and then allow others to think for themselves too. So we just ask those questions, we drop those seeds, we like, what do you think? Because then we're not going to, because then when we have those conversations, we get triggered by what other people say. It's like, oh, well, it's like, where are we at as a society? Like, where are we at? Technology is taking over everything. And we need to step away from it and step out into the world and form our own opinion and build our own lives. Because that's what we're doing. We're building other people's dreams. Let's build our own. Sort of a long-winded thing, Tanner, but I'm just on a bit of a rant. That's all. But I just feel like we're consuming too much tech. We're consuming too much news. We're not forming our own opinion. That's in a nutshell.
So definitely hear you. Yeah, I can definitely see that being like, it's kind of like the quick fix kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like the short, like looking for like the easiest solution possible, right? Instead like actually eating healthy, take like the quick pill, or instead of actually like doing your own research on something, just taking the word of someone else's word into doing it, right? So I can definitely see that aspect of it. I think also, but also I heard you say like technology has one good aspect of it, of you being able to go and share your opinion, go share your creativity, and go create that stuff. So it's just like everything, right? Like there is a good side, there's a bad side, and it depends on how you're using and how you're letting it dominate your life.
Be a creator, not a consumer. We consume so much. Yeah.
And I don't think necessarily consuming, like hearing other people's content, is necessarily a bad thing. Like I think all of us are going to be able to like take off like little, like, oh, I like what he said, I like what he said, but then making your own, like you were talking about, right?
Yes.
Like you're always going to be influenced by the outside, but it's really important you be aware of what kind of influences you're letting into your life, right? Who are the social media influencers in your life? What kind of songs you listen to? What kind of movies you listen to? Like, what kind of things are you allowing into your life? Because those things are going to influence you. They are going to have an impact on your life, and that's going to be drastic. And I'm a big believer that we need to be aware of how we're influencing ourselves, right? So,
yeah, great.
I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you. We do need to cut out as much technology as there is, and start to focus more on the actual like earthly experience. That's not to say like technology doesn't have any place at all within our society. I think there is a balance to be found between the two. What do you think? Do you think technology, like there is a space for technology?
There is, yeah. I just think that we're overusing it. We're becoming so reliant, and we're letting them digitalize everything that once they switch everything off, that's it.
Yeah.
That's if they have the power to do that, right? They can just switch
Yeah.
it off. They did it on Friday with the
Yeah. The cloud strike.
yeah.
The cloud strike update that had problems and made so like airports weren't like able to operate. Like they weren't able to like print out tickets. Like all their computers weren't working. They even like I heard like police stations weren't able to take 911 calls. Like when people called in with like emergencies, they weren't able to take their calls because their phone systems weren't working.
If we're so reliant on tech, then what if that happens on a bigger scale? I know we're going to be fine, but Tom, Dick, and Harry out there that are so reliant on tech are going to have a real hard time because all their shit's going to come up.
Yeah.
Because people are using this stuff to escape. So if they flick that off, if you're watching this, Tom, Dick, Harry, whoever you are, I'm going to ask this question to you. And you can comment on the video or comment on the reel or whatever this is going to go on. If they flick the switch for technology, it just went like that, would you be able to cope with your life being the way it is? Open-ended question for anyone out there to ponder.
Question.
Because if you don't have tech, what do you got? Exactly.
You got to look inside. Got to look inwards at that point. You got to deal with yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are running away from that. You can see it. Like their shadow, their dark night, whatever it is right there. But they're running away. If they were to flip it off, the drop of a hat, they go, right, see you later. That is when you'd have some interesting moments, I think. Tanner?
Yeah, I agree. And it makes me think now, like, one of the biggest detriments of technology could be like it's just a distraction from things that are really important, right? Like it's a distraction from like all the things that you're at least like I know for me, like when I was like playing a lot of video games like 24/7 and distracting myself, it was a distraction from like the life that I was in, like the debt that I was in and me gaining weight and me not feeling like fulfilled, like me not feeling like I'm like good enough, right? It just served as a distraction. So if that was to disappear, then we would have no, I mean, it's possible we might find a new distraction, right? But the idea is like if we didn't have that distraction, we were able to focus on our pain and actually feel that pain, we're much more likely to move, right? If we're actually feeling that pain is a teacher. The pain is there to tell you, hey, whatever you're doing right now is not working in life. It's time to get moving. It's time to get let this pain, this flame from the pain, right, go out right underneath your butt, get you moving, get you up, get you going, right?
That's it.
And get going. Like you don't want to feel that pain anymore, right? It's like putting your hand on a hot stove. You put your hand on a hot stove, you take your hand off because it burns, it doesn't feel good, right? Unfortunately, when we're distracting ourselves so much, distracting ourselves from these pains that we're feeling, it's like we're just keeping our hands on the hot stove and burning ourselves consistently. We're like, oh, what's that smell? It smells really bad in here. Little do we know it's actually us burning ourselves and bringing ourselves down a peg. So that's maybe one thing I could say to anyone who's listening now is to start to focus and ask yourself, is the technology really just a distraction from something that you're not facing within your life? If it is, maybe let yourself think about like what would be like if you actually face that distraction.
Turn your phone off for a couple of hours a day.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Get out of your room and go for a walk. See what happens.
Like
I'm getting really good at like I'll go to places and I'll leave my phone at home. I won't go with my phone anywhere. Just to be in the moment and enjoy the moment of who I'm with. Or if I'm going to the market or I'm doing something during the day, just enjoying the moment of being where I am. If I'm going down the beach, well, yeah, I'm leaving my phone here. I'm going to go and enjoy being there in that moment. Enjoying the smell of the salt water, enjoying being in the water and enjoying the sun that's shining on me and being grateful for being in that moment rather than sitting there and taking photos and letting Tom, Dick, and Harry know where I am, which I sometimes do that on my social media. But, it's like even just leave my phone in the car. Like sometimes I'll leave in the car or I'll put it on airplane mode and leave it in my bag and just lay down or just swim and just enjoy the moment. You know, I walk around the beaches and different places where I am now, and everyone's just got their heads down on their phones. It's like, well, look at the day that we're having. Like right now, it's not a cloud in the sky, not a fake cloud in the sky. It's beautiful and sunny. It's like, you got no reason to be doing this. Like, why?
Mhm.
Enjoy the moment. Like, what's more important? What Tom, Dick, or Harry's sharing on their social media, or what Snapchat you're getting, or what Instagram message you're getting? That can all wait. Enjoy the moment of where you currently are. And yeah, I'm just saying, don't take anything for granted. The little
Yeah,
things.
I love that.
That'll be my message to Tom, Dick, or Harry out there. Geez, I'll
I
tell you
love
what, if your name's Tom, Dick, or Harry, I'm so sorry for the things I've said today, but
it.
Tanner, that was a good podcast, mate. To wrap
Yeah,
things
we had a
up,
good talk.
for Tom, Dick, or Harry, what would you say?
I would
Said
say
that.
be real with yourself with how much,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, like where you are with technology in your life. Is it a is it being used as a distraction from your life? Is it being used, to make you feel better about where you are in life? Um, and it may be used for multiple different things, but really be honest with yourself and look deeper within yourself and ask yourself, is it being used to distract myself from this? Because the majority of the time, the answer is if you're playing too many video games or too much, if you're doom scrolling your phone or whatever it might be, it's either you don't. One, you're hiding from something, you're distracting yourself from something, or two, you just don't have a purpose, and
yeah.
so you're just wandering aimlessly around. So find yourself a purpose, or um, face that pain and stop distracting yourself. Stop running from your pain. Face your pain. Your life's going to go a lot better. If you need help, don't hesitate to reach out. Both me and Nathan are here for you guys. If you guys need to talk at any point.
Well
So
said. Well said. That was an awesome podcast, mate.
yeah,
And for
man.
anyone out there that's listening, there's always a way out,
Mm-hmm.
and we can help show you that way out, or help you show yourself that way out, and you can gain the conscious awareness and get to the root of why you're doing these things, so that you can then create the life that you wish to have, that you've always wanted to have. It's all right there waiting for you. It's just a matter of someone or yourself coming in and showing you that you are worthy and that you are enough, and that there is a way out of your current situation, because there's no situation that's too dark, too lonely, too sad, too whatever. There is always a way out of where you are. You have the power to change. You always have had the power. Influencers out there, programming has told you you don't have power. Yes, you do have power. You have always had the power, and that is your superpower. And if you want to change, you want to grow, you want to evolve, then you know where to find Tanner and I. We can help you get there. But not only help you, we can show you to get yourself there, because we help see and we help you see your own power, and we see your potential. So yeah, reach out to any one of us. We can help you see
Mm-hmm.
it, because we already see it, and you are worthy, and you are enough. And whoever needs to hear that, I'll say it again: you are worthy and you are enough. And Tanner, thank you so much for what you've shared today. That was really good. Awesome share.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Nathan. It was a great podcast, and thank you everyone for listening.
Tanner and I will be back soon next month with another podcast. We have some awesome things coming as well, and maybe another seminar and maybe a program. So we'll just, yeah, we'll see. We're looking forward to what we're going to create. Stay tuned. We'll see you guys soon. Have a really awesome day, or have a really awesome night, depending where in the world you are. And we are over and out. Tanner, thank you once again.
Thank you.